My name is Dolores, and I'm 58 years old. For 35 years, I worked as a registered nurse, caring for others, healing wounds, and offering comfort in the darkest moments. I thought I had seen everything life could throw at a person. I was wrong. Nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered in my own home, through an old baby monitor that I thought was broken. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you love unconditionally, you'll understand the pain I'm about to share. And if you're a grandmother watching this, please stay until the end because my story might just save a child's life, like it did for mine. It started 3 months ago when my daughter Sarah asked me to babysit my 2-year-old grandson, Marcus, while she worked extra shifts. Sarah had been struggling financially since her divorce, and I was more than happy to help. Marcus was the light of my life, with his bright smile and curious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Sarah when she was little. Sarah would drop Marcus off every morning at 7 and pick him up around 6 in the evening. Those were the most precious hours of my day. We would play, read stories, and I would watch him nap in the afternoon. But Marcus was an active little boy, and keeping up with him at 58 wasn't always easy. My knees ached from years of standing in hospital corridors, and my energy wasn't what it used to be. That's when I remembered the old baby monitor system I had used when Sarah was small. It had been sitting in a box in my closet for decades. The receiver was outdated, but I thought it might still work. I needed something to help me keep an eye on Marcus during his naps without having to constantly check on him. I set up the transmitter in the living room where Marcus usually slept and kept the receiver in the kitchen where I would prepare his meals. The first day I tried it, the static was terrible, and I could barely hear anything. I almost gave up, but something told me to keep trying. I adjusted the frequency, moved the transmitter to different positions, and finally, on the third day, it worked perfectly. The sound quality was crystal clear. I could hear Marcus breathing softly, his little snores, and even the sound of his favorite stuffed elephant hitting the floor when he tossed it in his sleep. For the first time in weeks, I felt relaxed during his nap time. I could wash dishes, prepare dinner, or just sit down and rest my tired feet, knowing I would hear him the moment he woke up. But here's the thing about old technology that I had completely forgotten: this baby monitor had a recording feature. It would automatically record when it detected sound, storing hours of audio on a small memory card. I had no idea it was recording everything. I thought it was just a simple transmitter and receiver system. For 2 weeks, everything seemed perfect. Marcus was happy, Sarah seemed less stressed, and I felt useful again. I was making a real difference in my family's life. Sarah would thank me every day, telling me how grateful she was to have such a supportive mother. She would hug me tight and say, "Mom, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're saving my life." Those words meant everything to me. After losing my husband 5 years ago, and with Sarah being my only child, I had often felt forgotten, like my purpose in life had ended. But caring for Marcus gave me a reason to wake up every morning with excitement. One evening, Sarah was running late to pick up Marcus. She called and said she would be there by 7 instead of 6. Marcus had already eaten dinner and was playing quietly with his blocks in the living room. I decided to start preparing his bath early, so he would be ready when Sarah arrived. As I was running the water in the bathroom, I heard Sarah's voice through the baby monitor. She had arrived and let herself in with her key. I was about to turn off the monitor when I heard her talking on the phone. At first, I didn't pay attention, but something in her tone made me stop and listen. "No, she has no idea," Sarah was saying in a whisper. "The old lady is completely clueless. She thinks she's helping, but she's actually making this so much easier for me." My blood ran cold. Old lady? Was she talking about me? I turned off the water and listened more carefully. "Trust me, Jake, this is going to work perfectly. She's already attached to Marcus, and when the time comes, she won't see it coming. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Jake was Sarah's ex-boyfriend, someone I had never trusted. He had a criminal record and had been in and out of jail for drug-related charges. Sarah had promised me she had cut all contact with him after Marcus was born. "I need a few more weeks to set everything up," Sarah continued. The paperwork for the nursing home is almost ready. Once I get her declared incompetent, I can take control of everything. The house, her savings, her retirement fund. It's all going to be mine. I couldn't breathe. My own daughter, the baby I had carried for 9 months, the child I had raised with unconditional love, was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could steal everything I had worked for my entire life. But it got worse. So much worse. And the best part, Sarah continued, is that she's been taking care of Marcus for free. Do you know how much daycare costs? I've been saving hundreds of dollars every week while she plays grandmother of the year. Once I get rid of her, I can use that money for other things. Other things. I knew exactly what she meant. Jake had always been involved with drugs, and if Sarah was back with him, it meant she was using again. I had suspected it during her teenage years, but she had convinced me she was clean. Apparently, I had been naive. I sank into a kitchen chair, my hands trembling as I held the baby monitor receiver. My daughter was not only planning to steal from me, but she was also using me as free childcare while she spent money on drugs. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced. Write in the comments if you've ever discovered something that completely changed how you saw someone you love. Because what I heard next made me realize that everything I thought I knew about my daughter was a lie. Marcus is getting more difficult to handle, Sarah was saying. Yesterday he wouldn't stop crying, and I had to leave him alone for 4 hours while I met with the lawyer. Good thing Mom is so eager to help. She thinks she's protecting him, but she's actually enabling me. 4 hours? She had left a 2-year-old alone for 4 hours? My heart was racing. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about Marcus's safety. I heard her footsteps approaching the kitchen, so I quickly pretended to be busy washing dishes. She appeared in the doorway with her usual fake smile. Hey, Mom. Sorry I'm late. How was Marcus today? Looking at her now, I noticed things I had missed before. Her eyes were slightly glazed, her pupils dilated. She was high. She had come to pick up her son while under the influence of drugs. He was perfect, as always, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Great. I really appreciate you watching him. You're such a lifesaver. The irony of her words was crushing. She thought she was manipulating me, using my love for Marcus against me. But she had no idea that I now knew the truth. After they left that night, I sat in my empty living room and cried harder than I had since my husband's funeral. The baby monitor was still on the coffee table, this innocent device that had revealed the most painful truth of my life. But as the tears dried and the shock began to wear off, something else took its place: determination. I had spent my entire career fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. I had advocated for patients, stood up to doctors who weren't providing proper care, and never backed down when someone's well-being was at stake. Marcus couldn't fight for himself. He was just a baby, dependent on adults to keep him safe. And if his own mother was failing him, then it was up to me to step in. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to keep that baby monitor recording. I needed evidence of what Sarah was really doing. Not just for my own protection, but for Marcus's safety. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal when Sarah dropped Marcus off. She was cheerful and chatty, completely unaware that I knew about her plans. I played along, forcing myself to smile and nod while inside I was screaming. After she left, I checked the baby monitor system more thoroughly. The instruction manual was still in the box, yellowed with age. I learned that it could record up to 48 hours of audio before the memory card was full. It automatically saved files with timestamps, creating a permanent record of everything it heard. For the next week, I documented everything. Every phone call Sarah made in my living room, every conversation with Jake, every detail of her scheme. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Sarah wasn't just planning to have me declared incompetent. She had already been forging my signature on documents, slowly transferring small amounts from my savings account to hers. She had been stealing from me for months. And Marcus, the things I heard about how she treated Marcus when I wasn't around made me physically ill. She would leave him alone while she went out with Jake. She would put him in his crib with a bottle and ignore him for hours. Sometimes she wouldn't feed him properly, expecting him to survive on whatever snacks she threw at him. One recording particularly haunted me. I heard Marcus crying in the background while Sarah was on the phone, and Jake's voice saying, "Just give him some of that baby Benadryl. It'll knock him out for hours." They were drugging my grandson to keep him quiet. A 2-year-old baby. I felt sick to my stomach and knew I had to act fast. But I also knew that if I confronted Sarah without solid evidence, she would deny everything and disappear with Marcus. I might never see him again. So I kept recording, kept documenting, and started researching my legal options. I found a family law attorney named Patricia Williams, a black woman about my age who specialized in grandparents' rights cases. When I called her office and explained my situation, she agreed to see me immediately. "Mrs. Johnson," she said during our first meeting, "what you're describing is a complex case involving neglect, fraud, and potential endangerment of a minor. The recordings are valuable evidence, but we need to be strategic about how we use them." Patricia explained that in our state, grandparents could petition for custody under specific circumstances, including when the parent was deemed unfit due to drug use or neglect. The recorded evidence I had gathered could support such a petition, but it would mean going to court against my own daughter. "I need you to understand," Patricia said, looking me directly in the eyes, "that if we pursue this, your relationship with Sarah may never recover. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Marcus's bright smile, his innocent laughter, the way he reached for me when he was scared or tired. I thought about Sarah drugging him, leaving him alone, using him as a tool to steal from me. "My relationship with Sarah is already over," I said. "The daughter I thought I knew never existed. But Marcus, he deserves better. He deserves to be safe and loved." Patricia nodded with understanding. "Then let's fight for him." Over the next 2 weeks, we prepared our case while I continued caring for Marcus during the days. Each morning when Sarah dropped him off, I hugged him a little tighter, knowing that soon everything would change. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Sarah continued to share her fake gratitude, telling me how wonderful it was to have such a supportive mother. Sometimes I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to ask her how she could betray me so completely. But I held my tongue and kept gathering evidence. By the end of the second week, we had over 60 hours of recorded conversations, documented proof of Sarah's drug use, evidence of financial fraud, and detailed records of child neglect. It was time to act. If you're a parent or grandparent watching this, I want you to pay attention to what happened next, because sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But that doesn't mean we should stay silent when a child's safety is at stake. On a Wednesday morning in October, everything came to a head. Sarah arrived to drop off Marcus as usual, but this time, Patricia was waiting in my living room with 2 police officers and a representative from Child Protective Services. Sarah walked in with Marcus in her arms, chatting about the weather, completely unsuspecting. When she saw the people in my living room, her face went white. "What's going on?" she demanded, instinctively holding Marcus closer. Patricia stepped forward. "Sarah Johnson, I'm Patricia Williams, representing your mother in a custody petition. These officers are here to execute a warrant for your arrest on charges of financial fraud and child endangerment." Sarah's eyes darted between me and the officials, finally landing on my face with a look of pure hatred. "You did this," she hissed. "You called them on your own daughter." "I protected my grandson," I replied, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. "Something you failed to do." The CPS worker gently took Marcus from Sarah's arms. He reached for me, crying, "Grandma! Grandma!" It broke my heart, but I knew this temporary separation was necessary to keep him safe. As the police read Sarah her rights, she turned to me one last time. "You have no idea what you've just done. You'll never see either of us again. I hope losing your precious money was worth it." But she was wrong. It wasn't about the money, and I would see Marcus again. Because the truth, captured on an old baby monitor, was about to set us both free. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, statements, and legal procedures. Marcus was placed in emergency custody with me while the case was processed. Patricia had prepared for this, and we had already submitted all necessary documentation to prove I was a fit guardian. That evening, I sat in the same living room where I had first heard Sarah's betrayal, but now Marcus was asleep in my arms. The baby monitor was silent on the coffee table, its job finally done. 3 days later, Sarah was released on bail, but she was prohibited from unsupervised contact with Marcus. She showed up at my house the next morning, looking terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and the smell of alcohol and something else I didn't want to identify clung to her. "Mom, please," she begged at my doorstep. "I know things got out of hand, but I'm his mother. You can't keep him from me." I looked at this woman who shared my blood, who I had carried in my womb and raised with all the love in my heart, and I felt nothing but sadness. "Sarah, you can see Marcus whenever you want," I said. "But only supervised visits, and only after you get clean. Those are the court's orders, not mine." "I don't have a drug problem," she shouted. "And I never stole from you. Whatever you think you heard, you're wrong." I disappeared into the house and returned with a small device, the baby monitor receiver. I pressed play on one of the saved recordings. Sarah's own voice filled the air. "The old lady is completely clueless. When I get rid of her, I can use that money for other things." I had to leave him alone for 4 hours. As her own words played back, Sarah's defiance crumbled. She sank onto my porch steps and began to cry. "I never meant for it to go this far," she sobbed. "Jake said it would be easy money, just temporary until I got back on my feet. I never wanted to hurt you or Marcus." "But you did hurt us," I said, sitting beside her. "You've been hurting us for months." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw a glimpse of the daughter I had raised. The facade was gone, the manipulation had stopped, and all that remained was a broken young woman who had made terrible choices. "I need help, Mom," she whispered. "I know I need help." That was the moment I had been waiting for. Not the anger, not the denial, not the blame. Just honest acknowledgement that she had a problem. "Then get help," I said. "Not for me, not for the courts, but for yourself. And maybe someday, for Marcus." The legal process took another 6 weeks. During that time, Marcus lived with me full-time. He was initially confused and would ask for "Mama" every day, but gradually he settled into a routine. We would wake up together, have breakfast, play in the garden, and read stories before bed. I discovered that Marcus had been experiencing more trauma than I had realized. He would flinch when voices got too loud, he hoarded food like he was afraid his next meal wouldn't come, and he had trouble sleeping alone. It broke my heart to see how Sarah's neglect had affected this innocent child. I enrolled him in a daycare program 3 days a week so he could socialize with other children and I could attend court hearings and meetings with lawyers. The daycare director, Mrs. Rodriguez, was concerned about Marcus's behavior at first. "He seems very anxious around adults," she observed. "And he's quite delayed in his speech for a 2-year-old. I explained our situation, and Mrs. Rodriguez immediately connected us with the center's child psychologist. Dr. Jennifer Park began working with Marcus twice a week, using play therapy to help him process his experiences. "Children are remarkably resilient," Dr. Park assured me. "With consistent love, security, and patience, Marcus will heal. But it will take time." Time was something I had plenty of. At 58, I thought my child-rearing days were over. I had imagined spending my retirement traveling, reading, maybe volunteering at the hospital. Instead, I found myself learning about toddler nutrition, researching preschools, and child-proofing my house all over again. But you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus brought life back into my home. His laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. His curiosity reminded me to see the world through fresh eyes. His unconditional love healed wounds I didn't even know I had. Meanwhile, Sarah was court-ordered to enter a rehabilitation program. For the first month, she resisted, showing up to supervised visits with Marcus while still under the influence. The social worker had to end several visits early because Sarah was incoherent or aggressive. But something changed after she hit what she later called her rock bottom. Jake was arrested on drug trafficking charges and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Without his influence, Sarah began to see clearly what her life had become. She entered a residential treatment facility and stayed for 90 days. During that time, she wasn't allowed any contact with Marcus or me. It was hard for all of us, but especially for Marcus, who couldn't understand why his mama had disappeared. "Mama coming back?" he would ask me every day. "I don't know, sweetheart," I would answer honestly. "But Grandma is here, and I love you very much." When Sarah completed her program, she looked like a different person. She had gained healthy weight, her skin was clear, and for the first time in years, her eyes were bright and focused. She had also cut her hair short and dyed it back to its natural brown color. Our first meeting was at the treatment center with a counselor present. Sarah looked nervous as she sat across from me in the small conference room. "Mom, I owe you an apology," she began, her voice shaking. "Not just for what I did to you, but for what I put Marcus through. I've been in therapy for 3 months, and I'm starting to understand how sick I was." I listened as she explained her addiction, how it had started with prescription pills after a back injury, how Jake had introduced her to harder drugs, how the addiction had consumed her ability to think clearly or make good decisions. "I convinced myself that I was a good mother because I made sure Marcus had a safe place to stay during the day," she said. "But leaving him with you while I got high wasn't being a good mother. It was using you to enable my addiction." The counselor, Dr. Martinez, had warned me that addicts often say what people want to hear. "Recovery is a process," he had explained. "Words are important, but actions over time are what really matter." So I listened to Sarah's apology, but I reserved judgment. Marcus's safety was still my priority. "I want to earn the right to be his mother again," Sarah continued. "Not just biologically, but truly. I want to be someone he can depend on, someone who puts his needs first." "What does that look like?" I asked. "It means staying clean, one day at a time. It means getting a job and finding stable housing. It means proving to you, to the courts, and to Marcus that I can be trusted." Over the next 6 months, Sarah did exactly that. She moved into a sober living facility, got a job at a local pharmacy, and attended NA meetings every day. She followed the court-ordered visitation schedule without complaint and never showed up under the influence. More importantly, her visits with Marcus began to change. Instead of expecting him to entertain her, she focused on his needs. She would bring books to read to him, help him with puzzles, or just sit quietly while he played. She stopped asking him to call her Mama and let him approach her at his own pace. Dr. Park, who observed some of these visits, noted the improvement. "Marcus is beginning to relax around his mother," she reported to the court. "His anxiety levels during visits have decreased significantly." But the real test came on Marcus's 3rd birthday. Sarah asked if she could help plan a small party at my house. It was the first time she had been in my home since the day she was arrested. Standing in my living room, she looked at the baby monitor still sitting on the coffee table. "I used to hate that thing," she said quietly. "I felt like it was spying on me, recording my private conversations." "It was," I replied. "And I'm glad it did." She nodded. "I am too. If you hadn't heard those conversations, I might never have gotten help. Marcus might have been seriously hurt, and I might be dead." That day, watching Sarah interact with Marcus at his birthday party, I saw glimpses of the mother she was capable of being. She was patient when he got cranky, gentle when he needed comfort, and genuinely engaged in his joy. But I also saw how hard it was for her. 3-year-olds are demanding, emotional, and exhausting. Several times, I noticed her stepping outside to compose herself or asking me to take over when she felt overwhelmed. "Parenting is hard work even under the best circumstances," I told her during a quiet moment. "After everything you've been through, it's going to be even harder." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm not asking for custody back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That surprised me. In all our conversations, she had always talked about being a mother to Marcus again. I've been in therapy for 8 months now, she explained. And I'm starting to understand that love sometimes means making sacrifices. Marcus is thriving with you. He's safe, he's happy, he's healing. Why would I disrupt that just because I want to feel like his mother again? It was the most mature thing I had ever heard Sarah say. But you are his mother, I said. Biology doesn't change. The question is what kind of mother you want to be. I want to be the kind of mother who puts his needs first, she replied. Even if that means admitting that someone else can do it better. By Marcus's 4th birthday, our situation had evolved into something none of us had expected. Sarah was 18 months sober, working full-time, and living in her own apartment. She saw Marcus 3 times a week, 2 supervised visits and 1 overnight stay at my house where I was nearby if needed. Marcus had begun calling her Mama Sarah and me Grandma Mama. To him, having 2 mothers was perfectly normal. He felt loved and secure with both of us, and that's all that mattered. The court case was officially resolved when Marcus turned 4. Sarah voluntarily relinquished her parental rights to me, but we established a co-parenting agreement that gave her regular visitation and input on major decisions about Marcus's upbringing. This isn't about winning or losing, Patricia explained during our final court appearance. This is about what's best for Marcus, and everyone involved has made decisions based on love rather than pride. Sarah stood up in court that day and addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, my mother has given my son something I couldn't: stability, security, and unconditional love. I'm not losing my son by making this decision. I'm ensuring that he has the best possible life. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Today, Marcus is 6 years old, and he's thriving. He's in 1st grade, reading above his level, and has friends from school who come over for playdates. He plays soccer on weekends, takes swimming lessons, and is learning to play the piano. He still sees his therapist, Dr. Park, once a month, but mostly for check-ins now. The anxiety and behavioral issues from his early trauma have largely resolved. He's a confident, happy little boy who knows he is loved. Sarah has been sober for 3 years now. She was promoted to pharmacy technician and is taking college courses to become a certified pharmacy technician. She has her own apartment, pays her bills on time, and has rebuilt relationships with old friends who were part of her life before addiction. She sees Marcus 4 times a week now, including overnight visits at her apartment. She attends his school events, helps with homework, and is actively involved in his life. But she's also realistic about her limitations and doesn't hesitate to ask for help when she needs it. I'm learning to be a mother at 29 years old, she told me recently. Most people figure this out in their 20s. But I'm grateful for the chance to learn, even if it's later than I planned. Our relationship has healed too, though it's different than it was before. There's a wariness that wasn't there when she was younger, a recognition that trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt slowly. But there's also a deeper understanding between us now. I put you through hell, Sarah said to me on Mother's Day this year. But you never gave up on me or Marcus. Even when you had every right to walk away. I never could have walked away from Marcus, I replied. And despite everything, I couldn't walk away from you either. As for me, at 61, I've discovered that life can begin again at any age. I thought my purpose was finished when I retired from nursing, but caring for Marcus has given me a new mission. I'm not just his grandmother, I'm his primary parent, his advocate, his safe harbor. It's exhausting some days. Chasing a 6-year-old when your knees creak and your energy flags isn't easy. But it's also invigorating. Marcus keeps me young, keeps me engaged with the world, gives me a reason to stay healthy and active. I've also discovered a new community. Through Marcus's school and activities, I've met other grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. We support each other, share resources, and remind each other that we're not too old to start over. The baby monitor still sits on my coffee table, but now it's just a reminder of how far we've come. Sometimes Marcus plays with it, pretending to talk to his toys through the speaker. He has no idea that this small device changed the course of his life. Last week, a young mother at Marcus's school approached me. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed, and I could see myself in her tired eyes. "How do you do it?" she asked. "Raising a child at your age? Aren't you tired?" I looked across the playground where Marcus was laughing with his friends, his face bright with joy and security. "I'm exhausted every day," I told her honestly. "But I'm also more fulfilled than I've ever been." Sometimes the most important work of our lives comes when we least expect it. If you're watching this video and you're facing a difficult decision about protecting someone you love, I want you to know that it's never too late to stand up for what's right. Even when it means confronting the people closest to you. Even when it means sacrificing relationships you thought were unbreakable. That baby monitor didn't just record conversations. It captured the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the only thing powerful enough to save a child's life and heal a broken family. Marcus doesn't know the full story of how he came to live with me. Someday, when he's older, we'll have that conversation. But for now, all he knows is that he is loved, he is safe, and he has a family that will always fight for him. And that old baby monitor? It's still recording. Not conversations or secrets anymore, but something much more precious. The sound of a little boy's laughter echoing through a home filled with love, second chances, and the unbreakable bond between a grandmother and her grandson. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from the most unexpected places. In my case, it came from a device I thought was broken. But it turns out it was working perfectly all along. It was just waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth that would change our lives forever. Subscribe if this story touched your heart, and comment below if you've ever had to make a difficult decision to protect someone you love. Because sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is listen to what our hearts are telling us, even when it breaks them in the process.